Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Chicago Med finally finished a heartbreaking cliffhanger after 7 years. Chicago Med Season 10, Episode 9, No Love Lost, finally wrapped up a storyline that had been left unresolved after a character exit 7 years ago. The youngest one Chicago show's winter premiere forces Charles Oliver Platt to deal with the workplace conflict while waiting for news about whether Goodwin, S. Apatha Merkerson, has survived a knife attack in her office. Peter, Mark Grepe, summons Charles for a hearing when Reese, Rachel DePillo, files a misconduct complaint against him because of their conflict over a patient in Chicago Med Season 10, Episode 8. Reese refuses to accept anything less than a full hearing, but she and Charles put their animosity aside when they realize their patient is suffering from episodic memory loss. Working together to figure out the root cause of this issue brings old resentments to the surface, but Charles and Reese ultimately clear the air while reviewing the patient's history. By the end of the Chicago Med Season 10, Episode 9, they diagnose her with Addison's disease and related depression before parting ways as friends and colleagues. Reese's abrupt exit from Chicago Med at the beginning of Season 4 was the culmination of a bizarre arc involving her biological father, a career criminal who resurfaced after many years to try to scam his daughter out of money. At the end of the story, Charles confronted the father about evidence that the man was a serial killer, then hesitated when the father collapsed. Reese blamed Charles for her father's subsequent death from a heart attack, which was her stated reason for leaving Gaffney Medical Center. Although Reese claimed that she couldn't be around Charles because of his alleged role in her father's death, leaving seemed like a strange reaction. If she truly believed that Charles failed to do his duty as a doctor, she could have gone to Goodwin or filed a complaint like she does now. Her relationship with Charles had been tumultuous since he took her on as a mentee, so it was clear there was more to her decision to leave than this incident. Reese's argument with Charles in No Love Lost finally clarifies the real reasons for her exit. Throughout her return, Reese continually accuses Charles of always having to be right, which is a clue as to what her real problem is. Charles is mystified by this accusation, but clearly this has been an ongoing issue that partially explains Reese's decision to leave Gaffney. Reese's resentment is at the root of the current conflict. Charles would not have revoked her privileges had he understood the reason she was giving her patient a placebo, or that she had consulted with other psychiatrists before taking that step, but she kept that information to herself because of her anger at him. Reese finally expresses her true feelings when Charles asks her why she didn't tell him the full story about her patient. When she was a resident, she felt he always tore her down, and thus afterward she kept second-guessing herself because his voice was stuck in her head. This admission allows Charles to let go of his own anger at the mistakes Reese made. This leads the two to realize what's wrong with their patient. Reese's resolution of her conflict with Charles may have wrapped up her storyline, but that doesn't necessarily mean that her association with Gaffney Medical Center is finished. While Reese's response to Charles asking if she wanted to work for him was a lighthearted "no way in hell," she is still practicing in Chicago. Thus, if another patient of hers lands in Gaffney, Reese could return again in Chicago Med. Hopefully this time Charles won't revoke her privileges at the hospital. Reese is the first former Chicago Med character to return in Season 10, and there are other characters who deserve a comeback storyline. Her story has come to a satisfactory ending for now, but Chicago Med left her exit open-ended, allowing her to pop back up if there is a good reason for her to be working with her former mentor on a difficult case. Furthermore, she and Charles parted as friends and agreed to go out to eat and catch up at some point, so Reese could make a cameo appearance if their next meeting is on screen. After a 7-year-long wait, the moment Chicago Med fans had been desperately craving finally arrived. The much-anticipated resolution to the heartbreaking cliffhanger left viewers on the edge of their seats, wondering if their favorite characters would ever find peace. The series, known for its intense drama, emotional twists, and jaw-dropping cliffhangers, had left audiences devastated after that unforgettable season finale. It all started 7 years ago. Dr. Will Halstead, Nick Gelfus, and Dr. Natalie Manning, Tori DeVito, were deeply in love, yet torn apart by the intense pressures of their jobs, the tragic events surrounding the emergency room, and the fact that fate often seemed to conspire against them. The season 7 finale ended with Natalie on the brink of death, after an explosion in the hospital left her critically injured. Will, desperate to save her, made a choice that haunted him for years. He couldn't let go, but the emotional toll it took on him was immeasurable. Fans were left devastated, not knowing if Natalie would survive and whether Will would ever recover from the loss. Flash forward 7 years, and Chicago Med had evolved. The original cast members had come and gone, but the legacy of their relationships, particularly Will and Natalie, remained a poignant memory in the hearts of loyal viewers. The hospital had seen numerous shifts in leadership, the arrival of new doctors, and the inevitable exits of beloved staff members. Yet despite all of this, the unresolved fate of Natalie and Will remained the elephant in the room, overshadowing all other storylines. The writers had kept fans guessing over the years. Every new season seemed to add new layers to the mystery. Was Natalie really gone? Was there hope for Will to move on? The rumors spread like wildfire, with some insisting that Natalie would make a miraculous return, while others feared that Will's story would be one of unrequited love forever. Then the announcement came. The long-awaited resolution to the cliffhanger would finally be revealed. Fans flooded social media with mixed emotions of excitement and anxiety. After so many years of waiting, what could the writers possibly do to satisfy their loyal fanbase? The special 2-hour episode began with a montage of the hospital's progression over the years. Flashbacks to the earlier seasons, with its beloved characters, set the tone for what was to come. But then, as the screen shifted to the present day, we saw Will in his office, alone. The years had clearly weighed on him. He was no longer the confident, hopeful doctor we had once known. The loss of Natalie had taken a toll on him in ways that were impossible to ignore. His face, once filled with hope, was now riddled with sadness, exhaustion, and unanswered questions. His colleagues had moved on, each coping with their own demons, but Will's grief was palpable. Then, in the most unexpected of moments, the phone rang. "Dr. Halstead?" The voice on the other end said. Will's expression shifted from weary to cautious. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "We have information about Dr. Natalie Manning," the voice replied. "You need to come to the hospital. Now." The suspense was unbearable as Will rushed through the hospital's corridors, his heart racing. Could it really be her? Was she alive? The viewers knew this could be the moment they'd been waiting for, but they also understood the gravity of what that meant. After 7 years, would Natalie have changed? Would their love have survived? And most importantly, would she want to pick up where they left off? Or would this reunion be more painful than the separation itself? Will reached the ICU and saw a figure lying in the bed, her back to him. He froze. His pulse quickened, and for a moment, he thought he might faint. It was impossible to believe, yet there she was, Natalie Manning, alive, though barely. She turned her head slowly, and when their eyes met, it was as if time had stood still. The years, the heartache, the pain, they all seemed to vanish for a brief moment. Will could barely find his voice. "Natalie," he whispered. Natalie's smile was faint, but it was undeniably hers. The tears that filled her eyes mirrored the ones that streamed down Will's face. She had been through hell, enduring years of rehabilitation and fighting to reclaim the life that had been torn away from her. The explosion had left her with severe injuries, but she had fought for every moment of life since then. "I didn't think I'd ever get to see you again," Natalie murmured.